Hi, Tony Sycamore here, Senior Market Analyst at IG in Australia. Overnight, the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq made fresh record closing highs, recovering from Friday's upside surprise in non-farm payrolls data. Non-farm payrolls increased by 272,000 in May, exceeding consensus expectations of 165,000. Additionally, average hourly earnings increased to 4.1% year on year versus the 3.9% expected. The US interest rate market this week is pricing in about 50% chance of a September rate cut by the Fed after the odds rose to 80% last week following cooler labor market data in the lead into non-farm payrolls. Whether those odds are cut further will depend on the outcome of this week's CPI data and, of course, Thursday's FOMC meeting. Let's take a look at the chart of the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq to see where they are at this point of time. This is the S&P weekly chart, and as you can see, after a few weeks of indecision, the S&P 500 actually closed above this trendline resistance coming from the January 2022 high. In theory, that's a positive sign and allows the S&P 500 to take its next steps up towards 5450 to 5500. For us to get some sort of indication that the uptrend has run its course, I would need to see the S&P firstly get back below the March highs, which is coming in around 5264, and then below this low here, which is at 5191, which was the low we saw into the end of May on those rebalancing flows, which we've spoken about in past videos. When we're looking at the Nasdaq, this is the weekly chart. Now, again, some indecision created by that end of month rebalancing sell flows into the end of May, but the first week of June has been a very positive outcome with the Nasdaq closing well above this resistance line coming from this high back from November 2021. So you can see it's closed well above there. And in the early part of this week, it's starting to extend that rally. In terms of how far that rally can go, well, I think there's an obvious target which we can all look towards where sell orders or sellers are likely to be looking to take profit. And that comes in from this trendline resistance from off this July high. It picks up this high in March at 18,416. At this point of time, depending on how you draw the trend line, comes in somewhere around 19,400 to 19,350. So this is where I think this rally will probably get to before it encounters the next stage of resistance. On the downside, some fairly clear defined levels to keep in mind. We have this 18,189 low, which was the low at the very last day of May from these rebalancing flows, given the outperformance we've seen in the Nasdaq. And then this uptrend support coming from the October low. That comes in around 17,850-ish at this point of time. And there's also a cluster of support coming in here around 18,750. So if the Nasdaq were to break below this low here and then break below this uptrend support, I think you've probably got a pullback coming towards 17,000. But they are the levels and what we're watching for this week. Thank you for listening and have a good week ahead.